Chef Marcello Rivera was a name whispered with reverence in the culinary world, known for his molten chocolate foie gras, black garlic consommé, and a tongue sharper than his sashimi knives. He had built La Llama, the top restaurant in Manhattan, into a temple of haute cuisine. But beneath the gleaming copper pans and Michelin stars, something darker was simmering. Marcello was a perfectionist. He screamed, he broke plates, he made line cooks cry and pastry chefs quit mid-shift. But his brilliance earned him indulgences until the day someone pushed back. It started on a Tuesday night. The reservation book was packed with power players, film executives, fashion icons, and a table for Senator Beckett, a major investor. Marcello, as usual, prowled the kitchen like a lion. But something was off. The new sauce for the lamb saddle wasn't caramelizing. The duck confit was too salty. He snapped, "Who touched my reductions? Who touched my station?" Sous chef Lena glanced up, frozen. She was new, just 6 weeks in, but she'd already shown a dangerous thing: talent. I adjusted the heat. The sauce was burning. Marcello stormed over, eyes blazing. "I don't care if the sauce turned to tar. You don't breathe on my work." Lena stood her ground. "It was ruined. I saved it." The kitchen fell silent. No one talked back to Marcello. Not ever. "Out," he hissed. "I work the line," she replied. "Not anymore." She left, but not before locking eyes with Diego, the quiet but watchful prep chef who'd once been Marcello's favorite student. He didn't say a word, but he saw everything. That night, the restaurant hummed, the dishes dazzled, and critics tweeted praises in real time. But something shifted in the kitchen. Whispers grew. Diego found a thumb drive under the pastry fridge. It was labeled "Insurance" in Sharpie. He tucked it into his apron without a word. 2 days later, Lena was on the front page of Eater. She claimed she'd been fired for preventing a food safety crisis. She alleged Marcello served expired truffles and intimidated staff into silence. It was a damning read. Marcello denied everything on his Instagram story with his usual bravado. But then more voices joined. A former sous chef accused him of wage theft. A pastry intern said he'd screamed at her until she vomited. An ex-dishwasher posted video clips. Marcello berating staff, throwing pans, calling a commis chef a rodent in Crocs. The scandal spread fast. Reservations plummeted. Then came the health inspector. Marcello stared at the clipboard-wielding official. "Anonymous tip," the inspector said. "Said you're serving black cod with visible mold and repurposing unsold caviar." Marcello laughed. "You want to see the cold storage? I'll give you a tour myself." But something had changed. The walk-in wasn't pristine. It was a mess. Labels were missing. Vacuum packs were dated wrong. Someone had tampered with the system, and Marcello knew who. Diego, the apprentice he once mentored like a son. When questioned, Diego smiled politely. I wouldn't know about tampering, but I do know Chef Rivera liked to rewrite expiration dates. Said shelf life is a mindset. Marcello knew what this was now, a coup, but it was just beginning. Marcello Rivera stood in his empty restaurant, the light from the chandelier flickering across linen-covered tables that no one had reserved in days. His Instagram had turned from curated elegance into a battlefield. Hashtags like #boil over Marcello, Kitchen Tyrant, and Halei Liar trended within hours of Lena's public statement. What was once a culinary shrine had become a war zone, and the knives were no longer in the drawers. He called an emergency staff meeting. Only half the team showed. Marcello stood at the head of the kitchen like a fallen general, eyes scanning the room. Diego leaned against the prep counter, arms crossed. The others looked anywhere but at their chef. I know some of you believe the garbage flying around online, Marcello began, but I built this place from nothing. You've seen how hard I work, how hard we work. Silence. He tried again. If anyone has questions, now's the time. I'm not hiding anything. No one spoke until one person did. Did you really freeze foie gras for 3 months and pass it off as fresh? The voice belonged to Leanne, the pastry chef. Marcello blinked. What? I was here. I saw the order come in and then disappear into storage. That's not what happened. You lied to everyone, chef, and you treated Lena like trash, like all of us. She walked out, and 3 more followed her. Marcello stared at the empty spots they left behind. It was already happening. Mutiny by attrition. Diego's rise, meanwhile. Diego was making moves of his own. Lena had found a lawyer, a big one. Celebrity labor advocate Moira Steele had taken on her case pro bono and made it loud. Interviews, TikToks, reels with behind-the-scenes dirt. One clip of Marcello throwing a copper pot at the wall got over 2 million views in a day. Is he unstable? One commenter wrote. Someone call Gordon Ramsay and tell him he has competition, joked another. Behind closed doors, Diego was coordinating. He had recordings, screenshots, and copies of Marcello's fake food safety logs. But his motives weren't pure justice. They were strategic. He didn't want to burn La Llama to the ground. He wanted to take it, and he wasn't alone. One night, Diego met Lena and Moira in the back room of a speakeasy-themed wine bar. Moira sipped her orange wine like a judge passing sentence. You sure about this? She asked Diego. You're still employed. Could protect your name. Could walk. I'm sure, he said. Lena leaned forward. We make him step down. Publicly. Say the team forced him out for abuse, fraud, and negligence. The board will replace him, and they'll want someone already in-house. Someone they can spin as redemption. You, said Moira. Diego nodded once. And so, the coup entered its final phase. Marcello's counterattack. Marcello wasn't blind. He'd faced worse in his early years. Poverty, obscurity, rejection from every culinary academy, but he wasn't prepared for a new kind of weapon, viral narratives. His mentor, Chef Bastien in Paris, once told him, "The sharpest knives never touch food. They cut your reputation." Marcello had always thought that was poetic nonsense. Now he understood. He pulled every string he had, called Senator Beckett, pleaded with Delilah Grace, the food critic who'd once called him culinary Shakespeare. He begged former interns to post positive stories. Most refused. Some replied with legal threats. Beckett gave him 48 hours. "Clean it up," the senator said, "or I pull my investment." Marcello paced through the empty dining room. He opened the wine cellar, pulled out a 2002 Chateau d'Yquem, poured a glass, and stared at his reflection in a pan. Then he remembered something. The thumb drive, the one labeled insurance. He never found it after Lena's exit, but he remembered where it had been stored. Behind the dry stock shelf, above the crate of Spanish anchovies. He rushed in, heart pounding. The shelf was empty. Then he checked the backup camera feeds. 3 weeks ago, a clip showed Diego slipping something into his pocket after cleaning the pastry station. Marcello's jaw clenched. So Diego had flipped. Or maybe he'd always been playing both sides. Marcello opened his laptop and began composing a letter. The letter. It wasn't an apology. Marcello didn't do apologies. It was a manifesto to the food world. There's truth in some of the stories. Yes, I demanded perfection. Yes, I pushed my team hard, sometimes too hard. But La Llama has served presidents, popes, and poets. That doesn't happen with weak sauce and weak wills. As for the allegations, some were lies, some are theater, some come from people who never belonged in a kitchen. I may step back, but I will not vanish. You cannot cancel craft. Marcello Rivera. He posted it at midnight. By morning, it had 30,000 shares. Half the comments were scathing. The rest were nostalgic. He's awful, but my God, his food is magic. This guy is Tony Soprano with tweezers. I miss the chaos already. Marcello arrived at the restaurant at noon to find 2 newsvang outside, a locked kitchen, and a security guard holding a letter from the board. Effective immediately, your access to La Llama is suspended pending legal review. He didn't yell. He didn't break anything. He walked away, but not far. He had one more card to play. Taste of the future. 2 weeks later, La Llama reopened, with Diego as executive chef. He stood in Marcello's old spot, directing the line, refining the new menu, more sustainable, more inclusive, more Lena. Critics returned, slowly, then more. The restaurant stabilized, but just before opening night, Diego got a package. No return address. Inside was a flash drive, labeled Final Cut. He plugged it in and found a video montage. Marcello, in dozens of kitchens, working with orphans in Peru, donating food in Ukraine, teaching women in Morocco to run kitchens. A hidden side, a charitable side, and then a final shot. Marcello in a new kitchen, simple, humble. He turned to the camera. This isn't war, Diego, it's a relay. I built the fire, now you keep it burning. Diego closed the laptop. He thought he'd feel victorious, but instead, he felt a chill. Because Marcello wasn't gone, he was regrouping, and someday the fire would return. The following morning, Carmen stood outside the restaurant alone, watching the first rays of sunlight strike the gleaming metal sign of ember and ash. She'd arrived 2 hours before opening. Her eyes scanned the street for any sign of Miguel, but the street was empty. She wasn't sure if she expected him to show up and fight or disappear forever. A part of her still wanted answers, and another part feared the truth. She turned the key, stepping inside the cold, empty restaurant. The scent of burnt citrus and scorched rosemary still hung faintly in the air. For all its glamour and fanfare, the place felt like a battlefield now. Each burn mark and dent in the walls, a scar of betrayal. In the quiet, Carmen opened the kitchen's supply closet and pulled out the same whiteboard Miguel used to map the menu. The last thing he'd written was still scrawled across the top in red. Reinvention demands risk. Her eyes narrowed. He'd always said the kitchen was a metaphor for life. As the staff trickled in, some groggy, others uncertain, Carmen was there to greet them. No lectures, no grandstanding, just presence. When Ivy, the sommelier, arrived with eyes puffy from crying, Carmen took her aside and handed her a glass of water. "We're going to be okay," Carmen said, softly but firmly. Ivy nodded, managing a weak smile. Despite the shaken trust and the broken hearts, Carmen made a decision that morning. They wouldn't cancel tonight's service. The show had to go on, not for pride, but because the restaurant was bigger than any one person. Ember and ash belonged to all of them. The dining room filled by 6 p.m. News of the scandal had not yet broken to the public, thanks to Ivy's quiet diplomacy with a friend at the Tribune. That gave them one final night before the storm. Every table was filled. Regulars, critics, a few faces Carmen suspected might be scouting for drama, but she ignored the hum of speculation, the sidelong glances. In the kitchen, she took control. "We're doing the full menu," she told the crew. "No shortcuts, no excuses. Miguel may have lit the match, but we're not going to let this place burn." It was the best service they'd ever done. Carmen plated each dish with obsessive precision. She adjusted sauces, seasoned with intuition, and pushed her crew with fierce compassion. No one slacked. They danced, moved, and pivoted like a single body. Ivy brought Carmen a note halfway through service. She unfolded it with trembling fingers. It was from Miguel. "I didn't think you'd have the guts to keep going. Maybe you always had it. Maybe I was too scared to see it. Tell them the truth if you want, or bury it. Either way, this place deserves someone who still believes in it, not someone who used it. I'm sorry. It was unsigned, but the handwriting was unmistakable. She folded the note into a tiny square and slid it into her apron. By midnight, the final guests had left. Applause echoed in the kitchen. They'd pulled off a miracle. As the crew collapsed around the staff table with beers and leftover sea bass, Carmen raised a glass. To surviving the fire, she said. And to starting fresh, Ivy added, clinking her glass. The others chimed in, relief pouring out in laughter. 2 weeks later, the article hit. The Tribune published a full exposé about Miguel's manipulations, stolen recipes, the secret investor scandal, and the internal sabotage. Carmen had sat with the journalist, told the whole story, everything but the affair. That was hers to carry. The fallout was brutal. Headlines screamed betrayal. Investors pulled out. Food blogs speculated. But customers, they kept coming. Not out of morbid curiosity, but loyalty. Carmen renamed the restaurant Ashes, a nod to what had been lost and what rose from it. In a quiet moment, alone on the rooftop above the kitchen, she found herself smiling, not the smile of vindication, but the peace of truth reclaimed. She'd been forged by fire, and she was still standing,